In the Second Age of Middle-earth, when Sauron posed as Anatar and convinced the elves of Eregion to craft a set of rings, 9 were given to great kings of men, and they alone of all races were most easily corrupted. 9 rings of power which gave them wealth and incredible magics, granting them long life and invisibility, but at a cost. Their minds turned to darkness, and after many years they became permanently invisible, with their thoughts and actions guided by the will of Sauron. From amongst the Ringwraiths, one was chosen as their lord, to serve as Sauron's second and lead his armies in battle. In the Second Age, he was known as the Lord of the Nazgul, and for 1200 years he would wreak havoc upon the peoples of Middle-earth, ending with the War of the Last Alliance and their defeat at the Battle of Dagorlad, when Isildur cut the one ring of power from Sauron's hand, destroying his body and scattering his armies. With Sauron vanquished, the Nazgul disappeared from Middle-earth, yet when Isildur chose to keep the one ring rather than destroy it, Sauron's spirit survived, and so too did the Nazgul. And so they re-emerged 1,000 years into the Third Age of Middle-earth. Sauron, who now went by the Necromancer, had founded his fortress at Dol Guldur, and the Lord of the Nazgul now reappeared in the world, tasked with the destruction of the northern kingdoms. Arthedain, Rhudaur, and Cardolan, the divided kingdoms of ancient Arnor. He founded his own kingdom in the far north of the Misty Mountains, and it became known as Angmar, with the Lord of the Nazgul given the title Witch King, Lord of Angmar. And so he raised mighty orc armies and charged against the kingdoms of men. First Rhudaur fell, and then Cardolan. Yet when he marched against Arthedain, the elves of Lindon and Rivendell came to their aid, and the Witch King's forces were defeated. But the assault did not stop. For hundreds of years, the Witch King of Angmar sent his forces against the kingdom of Arthedain, and in the year 1974 of the Third Age, Fornost, capital of Arthedain, was captured, and the last remnants of Arnor were destroyed. However, a year later, the general Earnur of Gondor landed at the Grey Havens and led an army of elves and men in the Battle of Fornost, where the Witch King was defeated and Arnor avenged. Yet even in defeat, Sauron was not displeased, as his servant had completed his mission and utterly vanquished the northern kingdoms of men. The Lord of the Ringwraiths returned to Mordor and began raising armies to continue their war, this time in the south, with the goal of destroying the last great kingdom of men in the west, Gondor. For centuries he would wage war against them, capturing the eastern half of Osgiliath, and even killing King Earnur in single combat, and thereby breaking the line of kings, leaving Gondor under the rule of stewards. When Sauron at last returned to Mordor, the Nazgul were sent to find a young hobbit named Frodo, who was said to possess the long-lost Ring of Power. They tracked him down to the Weather Hills, and the Witch King of Angmar was able to stab Frodo with a Morgul blade, before being driven off by Aragorn, son of Arathorn, heir to the throne of Gondor. Once again they attempted to capture Frodo at the river Bruinen. Here the elf Glorfindel released a great flood in the form of horses, to wash away the Nazgul and send them back to Mordor. The Nazgul continued their search, now riding great winged beasts of war, but the hobbit proved stealthy and could not be found. So instead the Witch King of Angmar was called to lead the armies of Sauron against the forces of Gondor and Rohan at the Battle of Pelennor Field. For much of the battle their victory seemed assured, yet when the Witch King saw a chance to kill King Theoden of Rohan, he seized it and charged against him. Theoden's horse panicked and dropped the king, leaving him at the Nazgul's mercy. Yet Eowyn and a small hobbit named Merry stood in his way, prepared to defend the king with their lives. It was long said that no man would ever kill the Witch King, and so that was proven true, for it was a hobbit and a woman that would see it done. For as the great Nazgul prepared to kill the young princess, Merry stabbed him in the back, granting Eowyn the distraction needed to ram her sword through the fell beast's head. And so the Witch King at last was destroyed. Soon Sauron's defeat would follow, and the destruction of the One Ring, thereby preventing the Nazgul from ever taking form again.